Hello everybody, DK here, and welcome to my ranking video of the Firefly family trilogy. That's just what I'm calling it. Of course, this is the trilogy of House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, and Three from Hell. Now, I got to be honest, I'm a little bit hesitant to rank this franchise because this franchise is so difficult to say that you really like it because these movies are so fucked up. Like, these characters are so fucked up. All three of these movies are a bunch of fucked up people doing a bunch of fucked up shit. That is for like 2 to 3 hours, every single one of these movies. And it's really hard to, like, you kind of feel weird when you say you like these movies because it makes you feel like you're a fucking freak. It does for me anyway. Maybe I'm just a crazy person and maybe you guys don't give a shit about any of that, but I was just a little bit hesitant to rank this because these movies are just, they're a lot. But that being said, I finally got a chance to check out the new one, Three from Hell, and I was very happy with it. And it's to the point now where I think I can safely call this franchise, this series, whatever you want to call it, a perfect trilogy in horror, and one of the very few. And I really was not expecting that at all. So, without saying anything more, I'm going to jump into the ranking because that is going to be how that was. Because I didn't really want to review Three from Hell because I'm just not very good at making single movie reviews, which is why I don't do it very often. But I think ranking them would be a lot more fun. So let's do it and let's get into it. Coming in at the number 3 spot on this list, shocking, is House of a Thousand Corpses. Now, while I think all three of these movies are really good, House of a Thousand Corpses is actually the weakest one for me because while it's still pretty good, you don't really get the same it's a very different movie than Three from Hell and The Devil's Reject. This movie does focus on the victims a lot more. In The Devil's Rejects and Three from Hell, you focus more on the Firefly family as a whole, and you follow them, not the victims, even though they are kind of the victims, which is one of the brilliant things about The Devil's Rejects and Three from Hell, which we'll get into when we get to those movies. But this movie, you do actually follow the victims, and it's a lot more of a standard kind of horror movie, of a standard slasher movie, basically, than the other two. The other two are very different. But this one is just, there's not a ton to talk about this movie. It's extremely basic, you know. These kids are on a little road trip. They come across these really bad people, and it all goes to shit. And that's basically the whole premise of this. But the characters, they're acted so well by Bill Moseley and Sherry Moon Zombie and Sid Haig, obviously. Like, these characters, you hate them so much, but you also kind of love them because they're so well acted, and these actors are so lovable. And I mean, like, all three of these actors are so easy to just fall in love with, and they play their characters so well. Especially Bill Moseley, who is a horror icon. He played Chop Top, and he's been in so many horror movies it's not even funny. And this role, Otis Driftwood, is probably his most famous role. And yes, these characters, it's so hard to actually say that you like these characters because of how fucking terrible people they are, but you actually do kinda like them. And while you are supposed to be following these victims, these kids, you're actually you're not entirely rooting for them is the thing. I don't know, this movie's just weird for me, and for me it is the weakest of the franchise. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks that way about House of a Thousand Corpses, but for me, it is the weakest of the franchise because it's so different than the other two, and the other two the other two are conveying something very straightforward, and in my opinion, they do it really well, and House of a Thousand Corpses doesn't have that same edge because because The Devil's Rejects and Three from Hell, they are putting a message through, and they are really, They do a lot with those movies, and this one is very different because this was, of course, the first movie, of course, and it wasn't really I don't think Rob Zombie intended for this franchise to become an actual franchise. I'm sure he probably meant to just make this movie and move on. But since they're so different, and since since the other two pulled it off so much better, I thought that's why I think House of a Thousand Corpses is the weakest one. Moving on to number 2, of course, is Three from Hell. Guys, I really enjoyed Three from Hell, but I will say Three from Hell, starting out with the good things about Three from Hell, the things I really liked about it, because obviously I ranked it higher than House of a Thousand Corpses. Three from Hell is exactly what you would have expected it to be. Three from Hell is just more of the same thing that you loved about The Devil's Rejects, more of those characters, more of those absolutely amazing actors playing their characters so awesomely, and you falling in love with these absolutely garbage human beings, and you just follow them throughout the whole movie. That is definitely the biggest part about this movie. Now, of course, one of the things that was a little bit disappointing, of course, with Three from Hell for a lot of people was the fact that Captain Spaulding would not be in it because of unfortunately Sid Haig has unfortunately left us. May he rest in peace. But I'm here to report, if you are staying away from Three from Hell, if you don't want to watch it because you don't think it's going to be good because of Captain Spaulding being gone, Richard Brake does a really great job in this movie. He is pretty much on the same level as Baby and Otis and Captain Spaulding. He's a very terrible, terrible, terrible human being, but you kind of love him at the same time. And while, once again, I'm very hesitant to say these things because these people are so horrible, but really, you do kind of love them because the actors are so great. They portray their characters so well, and you know these actors are great people in real life, and you just remember that you can go along with these movies and you can have fun with it and not let it ruin it for you. Because yes, the actors in this movie are absolutely awesome people in real life, especially Bill Moseley. So yes, it's one of those kind of things, and I do think Richard Brake does a good job. He does not make this movie unwatchable, and Richard Brake is actually kind of becoming a big name in horror these days. He, of course, was the best part about 31, which is, in my opinion, Rob Zombie's absolute worst film. I absolutely despise that movie. I think it's total garbage, but he was easily the standout part of that. Richard Brake has been in some other stuff, and he's always creepy. He's always a creepy character when he's in them, and he does so very effectively because he's just a great actor, and he does a great job in Three from Hell as Otis's brother, sort of. Well, not sort of. He's Otis's half-brother. And he's good in this movie. He's just as entertaining as Otis and as Baby and as Captain Spaulding was in The Devil's Rejects. And in my opinion, he does a good job. Another positive I will say about this movie, and also kind of negative as well actually, is the first half of this movie is a lot better than the second half. The first half of this movie is awesome. It's just more of the same thing you loved about The Devil's Rejects. And it's just more of that. Like, nothing more, nothing less. Just more of the same thing that you loved about Devil's Rejects. The second half, however, does fall flat just a little bit when compared to the first half. It's still great. The second half of Three from Hell is still great, but when it's compared to the first half, it does feel like it did go down in quality a little bit, because I will throw a quick spoiler warning out there just in case anybody is watching this wanting to find out anything about Three from Hell before they go check it out. So if you want to avoid spoilers, probably just like skip ahead like a couple minutes just to the final ranking, which is obviously The Devil's Rejects, because once you know it's the only movie left. But I will spoil that in the middle of this movie, the characters go to Mexico, and that is where the rest of this movie takes place. And in my opinion, the quality does go down just a little bit, and it tries to be another Devil's Rejects. The thing that makes The Devil's Rejects so awesome is the underlying and kind of brilliant like sub-story in that, which we'll talk about more when we get to The Devil's Rejects, but they kind of try and do the same thing, which is, of course, in The Devil's Rejects, the whole movie is you follow these psychopaths, these maniacs, but at the end of the movie, the third act, it turns it on its head, and you're like, oh, these were actually the victims the whole time. The Firefly family were the victims, and this freaking insane sheriff guy is a complete psychopath, and that's why that movie's so brilliant. And once again, we'll get to Devil's Rejects, don't you worry. I've got a lot of stuff to say about that movie, because that movie is a masterpiece. But Three from Hell, it tries to be another, the second half anyway, it tries to do that again, and in my opinion, doesn't work nearly as well. Another thing about Three from Hell is there is a huge argument to be had with, did we even need Three from Hell? Which is actually one of the main things I was totally put off by when it was first announced. When I saw this trailer for Three from Hell while watching this, I was like, but why? The ending of The Devil's Rejects is so absolutely flawless. One of the best endings ever, and it was the perfect ending for this little mini series that mini franchise that Rob Zombie created. After watching Three from Hell, I can safely say this was not a misstep, and it does not ruin The Devil's Rejects at all. They do give an explanation for the end. They don't just completely retcon it and say it never happened and say the movie ended after they drove off, and they just drove off into whatever happened to the first thing that happens in Three from Hell. They explain why, they give you a decent explanation, although it is a bit far-fetched, and at the end of the day, I do think Three from Hell did not ruin The Devil's Rejects. Maybe we still didn't entirely need it but I'm happy we got it. That's what I'm trying to say. So, number 2 is 3 from Hell. I would highly recommend you check out 3 from Hell if you're a fan of House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects, because it's just more of the same thing that you loved about those two movies. I think it was 3 hours. I don't know. It was definitely a very long movie. It lasted a very long time. So I think it was about a 3-hour movie. So that's mine. If you like House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects, 3 from Hell is just more of the same thing. You're gonna love it if you like those ones. So moving on to number 1, obviously, let's just jump in with The Devil's Rejects is an absolutely fucking flawless movie. I adore The Devil's Rejects. It is one of my absolute favorite post-millennial horror movies ever. It always has been my favorite of this franchise. I always preferred this one over House of a Thousand Corpses from the beginning. From the first time I saw The Devil's Rejects, I was like, this movie is 10 times better than House of a Thousand Corpses. This movie's absolutely fucking brilliant. And it just is. It just is. These characters, while they're so freaking terrible, these are the worst people you have ever seen in cinema, and you absolutely hate them, but their actors are so great, especially Bill Moseley and Sherry Moon Zombie and Sid Haig. They are just absolutely fucking amazing in this movie, and I'll just say it, I'm not ashamed of it, Sherry Moon Zombie is very nice to look at. She is a very lovely lady, but yes, there is so much about this movie that keeps the viewer entertained, and in my opinion, this is like one of the most entertaining horror movies I have ever seen. This movie keeps you entertained, keeps your eyes glued to the screen the entire time. It does not lose any steam whatsoever. Every single scene in this is just things that you absolutely love about this. If you're a fan of this franchise, this is just scene after scene after scene of great stuff. They give you a little bit of that House of a Thousand Corpses flair at the end of the movie with the confrontation with Wydell, and they're all tied to the chair, and he's talking about the victims from the first movie and even his brother and all that. And then you have the group of people in the motel, and that's a huge segment of the movie that is very like so hard to watch without being like, oh, why do I like this movie? I feel so dirty liking this movie, but it's so good at the same time. And that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say I hesitate to say I like this franchise, but I do. And yes, it's those kind of scenes in that part with the group at the motel, those horrific and just awful scenes that when you're watching it, you just feel dirty saying that you like it, but you do. And that is what makes it so difficult to enjoy, but it's not. It's still really good, and it is entertaining, whether you want to admit it or not. It is entertaining. These characters are so well acted and so great, and it's just so somehow likable somehow. It's crazy. Like, Rob Zombie has created these absolutely terrible people and made them likable somehow, and it's hard. And I think a part of that is one of the biggest things about this movie is, of course, the Firefly's entire thing with they are a family, and they love themselves as a family, and that is something we can all relate to. Maybe not in the same way that the Firefly family does it, but still, it is something that you can relate to. Of course, family comes first before everything, and that is something that is presented in The Devil's Rejects, and in my opinion, is presented rather well, and does make these characters, and does add to why these characters are so likable, on top of their actors being really great. And you just gotta remember that the actors are so great, and all the actors are really nice people. Especially Sid Haig and Bill Moseley, and Sherry Moon Zombie is absolutely awesome as well. I've seen countless interviews with Sherry Moon Zombie, and she just seems like the absolute coolest person. It's those kind of things that make these characters somehow likable, even though they're absolutely god-awful people. And that's why The Devil's Rejects is so brilliant. And of course, the final act of this movie is absolutely fucking incredible. It is one of the best third acts I have ever seen in cinema. I adore this third act so much. Basically flipping the entire concept on its head, saying basically that Otis and Baby and Sid Haig, they were the victims this entire movie. They were running from the sheriff. These people weren't running, these people, you're following them, and they're the victims. They're like the kids from the first movie. Basically, they are the kids from House of a Thousand Corpses, and Wydell is the Firefly family. That's why it's so fucking brilliant. And the entire scene is absolutely amazing, because Wydell is fucking insane. He's on the same level as these psychopaths, and you don't want to root for him because he's just as horrible. Even though he has his motives, obviously, but he's a terrible person. He's really fucked up in the head. And the whole way that it plays out with Tiny and whatnot, it is just perfect. How everything plays out. And then, honestly, the movie would have been great if that is where it ended. But then, I am someone who is not a big fan of adding something on top of onto the end of your movie. I feel like you should leave it. Like, a perfect example, I just watched April Fool's Day, and the final act of that movie, the final twist in that movie was absolutely fucking brilliant. I loved it so much. It was incredible. It swept me off of my feet. And then after that's done, there is one last scene that I was just like, why? The next time I watch this movie, I am totally gonna end it after that last scene. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And that is something that happens constantly. Like, perfect examples, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th Part 3, just when they add some stupid thing at the end of it, or Sinister, when they add the final little scene at the end when it's going through the hallway and Bagul pops out and jump scares you. I hate that shit. It is one of my least favorite things ever. This movie does not commit that sin. The final segment of this movie is absolutely fucking amazing. It is so flawless. I love it so much. Of course, I'm sure you've all seen it. Of course, the final part of this movie when the Firefly family, when Otis and Baby and Sid Haig are in the car and they're driving, and there is the police officers just lined up ready to kill them, and they just go for it, and they just drive for it as free as a bird plays, and it's absolutely perfect. And if that's where the franchise had ended, it would have been an absolutely perfect end. Luckily, 3 from Hell doesn't ruin that amazing, amazing ending like some other things will do in franchises that will, an extra sequel on top of a completely unnecessary sequel. Like, a completely unnecessary sequel comes out, and sometimes it actually does kind of hurt the, like Alien 3, that's a perfect example, even though I do kind of like Alien 3. It's a perfect example. It kind of hurts what you loved about Aliens. And this movie, in my opinion, 3 from Hell does not do that to The Devil's Rejects. I think this movie is just brilliant. I think it's a total masterpiece. I think it's the best thing Rob Zombie's ever put out in terms, and I'm a huge Rob Zombie fan. I love a lot of his movies, although I really hate 31, and I'm not a huge fan of the Halloween remakes, which only really leaves this franchise, and I guess Lords of Salem, which is decent, but, and I love his music as well. I was a huge fan of White Zombie, and then his solo career was really, really strong as well, so I'm a big fan of Rob Zombie, and I do think that Devil's Rejects is the absolute best thing he ever created. I really, really love this movie, and that is going to wrap it up. That is my ranking of the Firefly family trilogy. Of course, House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, and 3 from Hell. Guys, let me know in the comment section down below your ranking for this franchise, and give me your reasons and whatnot, and definitely interested to hear, because I actually have no idea what people are gonna say. I've heard for the most part people say The Devil's Rejects is their favorite. Like, most people that I talk about with this franchise, they always say The Devil's Rejects is their favorite. Of course, 3 from Hell is very, very new, and a lot of people haven't even watched it yet because, most people are fans of the ending of The Devil's Rejects, and they don't really think that it was necessary to have it. But I'm here to tell you, if you're like that, definitely go give 3 from Hell a watch. It's worth it. It's just more of the same thing you loved about The Devil's Rejects. For at least the first half. The second half, a little bit less so, but still very entertaining. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching this video. Let me know what you thought of the video in the comment section down below. And with that being said, this is DK Guillotine signing out. And feel free to leave me some suggestions for franchises you want to see me rank in the future. Because you know what? As much as I love doing these rankings, I think this is the perfect kind of series to let you guys pick. So give me some franchises you would like to see me rank, and I will do them. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and this is DK Guillotine signing out.